My boss fired me in front of everyone, so I bought the building. Cold reckoning. The new landlord. I want to tell you about the best day of my professional life. It wasn't the day I got promoted. It wasn't the day I closed my biggest deal. It wasn't even the day I signed the papers. It was the day Richard Calloway looked up from his desk and realized who was standing in the doorway. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where it actually began. A Tuesday morning in March, Midtown Manhattan, the kind of cold that gets into your coat and stays there. I was 34 years old. I had worked at Calloway Group for 9 years. 9 years. I had given that company everything. Late nights when everyone else had gone home, weekends when my phone buzzed and I always answered. Client relationships I had built from scratch, from a single cold email, from nothing. I wasn't just an employee, I was the infrastructure, the one who knew where everything was, who everyone was, what every contract said, and what it actually meant. Richard knew it too. He just never said it out loud. What Richard said out loud was different. He called me efficient, useful, a good soldier. Never brilliant, never visionary, never irreplaceable. That word came later. The morning of March 14th started like every other morning. I was at my desk by 7:45, coffee already cold, emails already answered. I had prepared a full presentation for the quarterly review, 3 weeks of work, 42 slides, every number verified twice. The conference room was full by 9. 12 people, senior staff, 2 board members who had flown in from Chicago. I set up the projector, I organized the handouts, I made sure the room was perfect. And then Richard walked in. He didn't look at me. He looked at the board members. He smiled the way he always smiled when there was an audience, wide, practiced, perfectly calibrated. He sat down at the head of the table. And then he said, without warning, without preamble, without even the decency of a private conversation, "Actually, before we begin, I need to address something. We've been evaluating the team structure, and we've decided that some positions are no longer aligned with the company's direction." He paused. And then he looked directly at me. "Sarah, we're going to have to let you go, effective today. HR will handle the details." 12 people staring at me. The board members from Chicago, the junior associates who I had trained, the assistant who I had helped get hired 8 months earlier. All of them watching. Richard shuffled his papers, as if he had just mentioned a change in the coffee order. "You're smart," he said. "You'll land on your feet. You're replaceable here, but you'll find somewhere you fit better." Replaceable. He said it the way people say the weather, casually, without weight. I stood up. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I picked up my notebook, the same one I had carried into that building for 9 years, and I walked out of that conference room. I did not look back. The elevator ride down was 31 floors. I counted every single one. The thing about humiliation, the real public kind, is that it doesn't hit you immediately. Your body goes into a kind of protective stillness, like a circuit breaker tripping to prevent a larger fire. I walked out onto 6th Avenue and stood in the March cold for a long time. And then something shifted. Not anger, not grief. Something quieter than both. Clarity. I went home, I opened my laptop, and I started making a list, not of grievances, not of everything Richard had done wrong, but of everything I actually knew. The markets I understood, the relationships I owned, the gaps I had watched go unfilled for 9 years because Richard was too proud to admit he didn't see them. I knew commercial real estate in New York the way some people know their own handwriting. And I knew something else. I knew the building. 1247 6th Avenue, 12 floors, built in 1987, Callaway Group occupied floors 4 through 7. The lease, I knew this because I had handled the renewal paperwork 3 years earlier, expired in 18 months. The building had been on the market quietly for 2 years, priced just high enough to deter casual buyers, just low enough to be real. I had walked past the listing 6 times and never let myself think about it. That night, I let myself think about it. I had savings, more than people assumed, because I had lived carefully while everyone around me spent visibly. I had a relationship with a commercial lender I had brought to Callaway as a client 4 years earlier. I had a network I had built entirely on my own, not on Richard's name, on mine. I did not move fast. I moved carefully. The way I had always worked, while everyone else was watching the clock. It took 4 months. 4 months of due diligence, of financing structures, of conversations with the current owner, a quiet man named Gerald Park, who had held that building for 20 years and wanted to sell to someone who would take care of it. I told him the truth about who I was and what I intended. He shook my hand and said, "You remind me of myself at your age." I signed the papers on a Friday morning in late July. I owned the building. I said those words to myself quietly, alone, in Gerald Park's former office on the 11th floor, looking out at 6th Avenue. I owned the building. Then I went home and slept for 11 hours. 3 months later, the Callaway Group lease came up for its standard annual review. The new landlord requested a meeting. I wore the same coat I had worn on March 14th, the cold one that gets inside and stays there. I walked into the conference room on the 4th floor. The same conference room. The same projector. The same table. Richard was already seated when I walked in. He was looking at his phone. His assistant, not mine anymore, was setting up water glasses. He looked up. And in the 3 seconds before he composed himself, I saw everything. The recognition, the recalculation, the pride trying to reorganize itself into something functional. "Sarah," he said. "Mr. Callaway," I said. I sat down at the head of the table. I opened my notebook, the same one, and I looked at him calmly. "I've reviewed the lease terms," I said. "I have some adjustments I'd like to discuss." I did not smile the way Richard smiled. I didn't need an audience. The meeting lasted 40 minutes. I was professional, fair, precise. I did not humiliate him. Not because he didn't deserve it, but because I had not bought that building for revenge. I had bought it because I was done building things for other people to own. I had bought it because replaceable was the most expensive word anyone had ever said to me, and I had decided to make them pay for it in rent. People ask me sometimes if I planned it from the beginning, from that elevator ride, from those 31 floors. The honest answer is no. I didn't plan it. I just stopped waiting for someone else to recognize my value and started building something that made the question irrelevant. Here is what I know now. Your boss can fire you in front of a room full of people. They can call you replaceable without blinking. They can shuffle their papers and move on to the next agenda item as if you were nothing. But they cannot take your knowledge. They cannot take your relationships. They cannot take the 9 years of understanding you carry out the door in a notebook. And sometimes, if you're precise and patient and willing to bet on yourself when no one else will, you can buy the building. I still work late. But now, when the last light goes off on the 4th floor, it's my electricity they're saving.